Before Roswell was cool, before the Greys had merch, there were two ordinary people, one empty New Hampshire highway and a night that rewrote the blueprint for every alien abduction story that came out. We're examining the abduction of Ben Barney Hill tonight on Newsworthy. Two words and two question marks.
That's for you, Brett. Brett is not with us again this week. This week, Brett is at a very exclusive place polishing little white balls. I'll leave it at that.
You can't leave it like that.
I absolutely leave it like that.
No, that's just not right.
That is right.
Say
Should
that
be here.
polishing little white balls.
Yeah.
My.
How are
I'm
you
sorry,
doing?
Brett. I tried to help you, but apparently he's not going to let me. I'm doing great. Yourself?
Well, I'm glad Wednesday night. I'm still kicking. It's been a week from Hades. That's okay. I'm excited about tonight's topic.
Absolutely. We used to do a lot like this, and not as much anymore. And I'm excited to go back, not to mention the fact that this is kind of the OG, right?
Yeah.
For its genre, this is the OG.
Yeah. We have one of the things that we did over the course of our holiday break was decide we mapped out our entire year for one. And we took a lot of listener advice, people wanting to hear more and more conspiracy theories. So there's a lot more of that this year. This kind of brings us back to what we like to do,
Yep.
and it's a lot of fun. Not fun for the people involved in this particular case. Tonight we're going to be talking about Betty and Barney Hill. What a interesting couple, which we'll get into all that in a second. But you ready to get into it?
I am. Let's do it.
So to understand the Hills, you have to understand the world in which they lived. 1961 was a year of much tension. The Cold War was in full swing. The Berlin Wall had just gone up. The space race was heating up. Yuri Gagarin had orbited the Earth only months later. America was looking at the sky with a mix of fear and fascination. And in the middle of all of that, you had Betty and Barney Hill, a quiet, interracial couple living in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Their marriage alone was an act of courage. Interracial marriage wouldn't even be legal nationwide for another 6 years. That's saying something.
It is.
Barney worked nights at the post office. Betty worked in child welfare. They were active in the NAACP. They hosted meetings. They marched. They wrote letters. They were very respected. They were also exhausted. The kind of exhausted that comes from fighting two battles, one at work and one that society would put on their shoulders. This matters because skeptics later try to use their stress as an explanation. But the Hills were not fragile people. They were resilient, they were grounded. And that's what makes what happens next so hard to dismiss. They had taken a spontaneous trip to Niagara Falls, a break from the grind. On the way home, somewhere around Colebrook, Betty noticed a bright light in the sky. At first, she thought it was a star, but the star then moved. It pulsed, and it grew larger. Barney tried to ignore it. He was the practical, skeptical Jerry kind of man who trusted what he could touch, what he could see, and what he could taste.
Yep.
But the light kept following. Betty leaned out the window with binoculars, and she saw something structured, metallic. Definitely not a star. Definitely not a plane. Barney still wasn't convinced. He kept driving. But as the light descended, closing the distance, and finally, somewhere near Indian Head, he begrudgingly pulled over. Barney stepped out with binoculars, and that's when everything changed. He saw it, a craft, large, silent, hovering. He saw windows, and he saw movement inside those windows. And then he saw them. Humanoid figures standing, watching him back. Later, he said he felt something, a message, a command, telling him to stay exactly where he was, more felt than heard. He didn't. He didn't run back to the car. He ran back to the car and he shouted, "Betty, we have to get out of here." I can see you doing that too. This sounds like something you would do. They sped off, but the craft descended behind them. Buzzing, beeping sound filled the entire car. The air felt thick. Betty said it felt like they were being pulled backwards. And then, nothing. Just the road, just the dark, just silence. When they finally reached home, the timeline didn't make any sense. The drive that they took should have taken them 4 hours. It took 7. They both of their watches had stopped permanently. Not stopped, not slowed, not broken, just stopped. Barney's shoes were scuffed like he'd been dragged, and Betty's dress was torn at the zipper and the hem. And there was the strange pink powder on the fabric, a residue that discolored the dress and then later vanished. Their car had circular polished spots on the trunk, spots that made a compass spin wildly. This wasn't just we lost track of time. This was physical evidence, evidence that didn't match memories. They tried to move on. They tried to rationalize it, but the missing time gnawed at them. Something had happened. They just couldn't remember what. I'm going to stop right there for just a second because I'd like to know what you would be doing in this situation, Jerry.
You remember earlier when you said it sounded like me, the point when Barney was trying to get the heck out of Dodge, if you will. You're doggone straight. I've heard enough that, yes, I would have been getting the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
First of all, it wouldn't have even taken for me to get to the point that it did Barney. They began watching this. I think Betty first saw it. She was watching it as he was driving. And she began noticing these erratic movement, these erratic patterns that it was making. Because if I remember correctly, Barney at first said it's probably just an airplane. Later, they thought maybe it's a satellite. Mm-hmm. None of it added up. And she began telling him, wait a minute, the movements this thing is making is very erratic. It's not straight in one direction. At points, it seemed to move directly toward them. These are things that normal flying objects don't do. You know, all right, I'd have been getting the hell out of there.
What it makes me think of, and one of the other reasons I want to stop, first of all, it's festival season. We've got lots of festivals lined up that we're going to come out to the public. If you want to tell your story, come find us at one of these festivals. We have our recording equipment there. We can interview you on the spot. It's a ton of fun.
Also, if there's any festivals they would like to see us at, there's possibility it's on our list.
Yeah.
But hey, an email and let us know. And if it's not on our list, we'll look into it. Maybe we'll be able to be there.
Absolutely. You know, we're in Central Kentucky, but we don't mind traveling. It's fun. You're retired, and I'm pretty flexible. So
There you go. Absolutely.
it's a lot of fun, and we really, really enjoy those. But I said that to say this. It reminds me so much of when we were in Hocking Hills at the Bigfoot Festival in Hocking Hills the first year, and how many different people from different states told us the same story about the triangle object with four lights under it.
Yep.
How it was just hovering, it was silent, and it seemed to kind of look at them and track them, and then move on. Just crazy, right?
For the listeners, think about what Steve just said. We're at a Bigfoot event, cryptid event. So you can imagine being told stories about all types of different
Yeah,
cryptids. It
and we
doesn't
got
have to
all
be
kinds.
Bigfoot. But Steve's right. We had so many stories that weren't cryptid related at all. Like he said, they weren't claiming it was UFOs. They were just saying, hey, here's what I saw. Very similar stories we were told multiple
Multiple
times.
states,
Yeah,
different
from
people
everywhere.
that had no way of knowing each other, didn't even know that we had heard that. In fact, we usually were the ones at the end of the story, like, you don't know how many times I've already heard
Yeah,
that story.
Exactly.
Uh,
Very true.
and this case so much reminds me of the little old lady, and I got to tell the story because it is directly like this. Do you remember the little 80-year-old lady?
Yep.
She walked. So these festivals, the first one, we didn't know what we were doing. It was so busy, and we were just talking to as many people as we could talk to. And this little old lady, I was doing an interview. I seen her walk past. We have a sandwich board sign that we put out that just says like, "Tell us your story, share your story, whatever." She read it. I seen her looking at it, rubbing her chin, and she walked on. Well, the next time she came by, she stopped. She read the sandwich board sign, and I was actually chatting with someone else who was a talker. I couldn't break away, and she walked on by.
Yep.
And I was like, dang it. The third time this little lady, and she's like in her 70s, 80s. She's not a spry young chicken.
Yep.
The third time she walks by
And stop.
and stops, I catch her. I'm free. I catch her because that's what I do. I said, now I know this is the third time you've walked by and read that sign. You've got a story.
Yep.
And she says, I'm not going on the air. I'm not being recorded. Okay, just tell me your story. And she sat there and she looked right, she looked left, and she says, fine. And she says, when I was 16, it was the very first time I'd ever driven alone anywhere. And it was getting dark, and I'm on this road. She told me the road. I'm not from Central Ohio. I don't know what road she's talking about, but she told me the road. She goes, I come up over the hill, and there's this thing sitting in the middle of the road about a quarter of a mile away. And I stop the car. And I'm just sitting there because I don't know what to do. It's right in the middle of the road. It's bright. And I'm like, okay. And she goes, as soon as I stop, it shoots up, straight up like 20 feet and shines a light on my car. And my car completely dies. And then it just poof, shoots
And
up
took off.
and it was gone, straight up. This is mid-60s, about the same time that this right here happened. And she said her car came back on and she drove home. She said, I have held that story in for 60 years. And she just went, whew.
I heard her
It's-
tell parts of this story. The thing that sticks out to me the most is that sigh at the end.
Yes,
And the look on her face.
just relief.
Yes, that's the one. If you had to pick one word, it was relief.
Yeah,
It was a weight off her shoulders.
that she was able to
Finally
Feel-
share it.
feel
She felt
safe
comfortable.
enough.
Yes,
to-
safe and comfortable enough to share that story. And you could just look at her and tell. You
Yeah.
didn't have to have heard the story. People 100 feet away could have looked at her and told she was relieved for
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, and so it applies to this. This is
Mhm.
exactly what happened to
Yeah.
these folks. Here's the problem. In the days that followed, the hills felt different. Barney felt a ring of warts around his groin, something that he had never had before. He became anxious, jumpy, and unable to sleep. He kept checking windows. Betty became obsessed with the incident. She wrote down everything she could remember. She contacted the NICAP, that's the National Investigation Committee on Aerial Phenomena, and filed an official report. The NICAP took her very seriously. They interviewed the Hills for hours, and they found them to be credible. But the real turning point came when Betty began having dreams. About 10 days after the encounter, Betty started having these vivid, recurring dreams. Not symbolic dreams, not fragmented dreams, but detailed, structured dreams that played out like scenes in a movie. She dreamed of being taken onto a craft of strange beings with large eyes and grayish skin, of medical procedures, of a room filled with instruments that she couldn't recognize. She dreamed of a leader, air quotes, who tried to calm her. She dreamed of a translator who struggled to communicate. She dreamed of a star map, which is very important later in the story. She dreamed patterns of stars that were connected by lines, and these dreams repeated for at least 5 nights. Then they stopped, completely stopped. Betty wrote them all down in detail, pages and pages of descriptions. Psychologists later debated whether these dreams were trauma responses, symbolic processing, or fragments of a very real event. But here's the thing. Betty didn't tell Barney the details, and yet, under hypnosis later, Barney described many of the same things, down to the letter. By 1962, the Hills were struggling. Barney's anxiety was getting worse. He felt like something was wrong with him, something he couldn't name. He, on the other hand, was having nightmares. He was losing sleep and he was losing weight. Betty was trying to hold everything together, but the dreams continued to haunt her. Finally, their doctor referred them to Dr. Benjamin Simon, a psychiatrist known for treating trauma, especially among veterans. Dr. Simon did not believe in UFOs. He didn't care a hoot about aliens. He only cared about symptoms. He agreed to hypnotize them separately to help them process whatever it was that happened. And well, what came out of those sessions, we're going to leave that for Jerry. Also, while we're talking, Jerry, I want to thank one of our listeners, and they're asking this question to what you're about to cover next. They wanted to know if the Hills got probed.
Apparently, they seem to think that was a possibility. I'll answer that further later. How about
Absolutely, that works.
To set the stage a little bit, I think it's important to note that the Hills, when they began to seek treatment, as you mentioned, they were seeking help. They weren't seeking publicity.
No, not at all.
I think it's also important to note that they didn't come forward claiming they were abducted. They came forward claiming of some very real physical problems, anxiety, nightmares, the missing time. They sought help for these things. They didn't seek help to try to get publicity.
Have you ever had the types of, you struggle mightily with sleep. Have you ever had the type of lucid, active dreams that they have?
Never.
I want to tell you, I quit smoking almost 16, 17 years ago at this point, and I used the drug Chantix to help me quit smoking. And it worked wonderfully. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. But the time that I was on Chantix, I had the most vivid, real, bright dreams I have ever had in my entire life. Ever. To this day, I have never since had those dreams or before had those dreams that I had when I was on Chantix. That stuff, it was like real life, but there was like somebody following me around with a spotlight, and everywhere I looked was just that bright. It was the weirdest thing. I'd wake up just pouring sweat like I'd been running all night. Because I'd been running all night with the spotlight behind me shining up to everything that was out there. Now, I don't even know if they use Chantix anymore. It had some pretty negative side effects.
That's the only side effect, and it's you
Okay.
because it is extremely effective at getting people to stop smoking.
Yeah, it was wonderful to me. I'll never forget. I was a store manager at the time. We both did retail, and I was in that, and I'd go out and have a puff and come back in just be green as a gourd because for me, it made me sick every time I smoked a cigarette. Once it got in my
It didn't
system,
do that to me.
I puffed a cigarette, boy, I just green as gills, and
It
my
just made
system-
me not want it or feel like I needed it.
Oh,
That's what it
see,
did to me.
God, it made me so sick.
It affected us differently. I had an
Yeah.
employee, and I was trying to remember his name. Excuse me. That it affected very similar to you, the way it did to him. He told me a story once. I asked him why he quit taking Chantix because he was wanting to quit smoking. He had mentioned to me that he had tried Chantix and it was helping. It was decreasing his urges. I tried it. It worked wonderfully.
Yeah,
Um,
I was done in a week.
it took me a while longer than that. But anyway, I asked him why he stopped. He said, one night I woke up and had to go to the restroom. He said, I got up and went to the restroom. I met my wife. Apparently, something had woke her up. And I'm standing in the hallway having a conversation with my wife. Someone tapped me from behind on my shoulder. I turned around. It was my wife. He said, that was my last night taking Chantix. That to me sums up perfectly the story you just
Dude,
told
I'm
about
telling
some
you.
of your lucid dreams.
So lucid.
And that's exactly the way he described it. I
Doug,
was like, you're what? He's like, yeah, I know.
I will never forget Doug Denton's line to me when I came. I went out, and I'll never forget, it was a hot day. It was a truck day, and I went out the front and had a puff, and I came back in just green as a gourd. And Doug Denton, the old country boy, he looks at me and he says, you know, you're a pretty smart old boy, but you're going to get it. And I was like, what are you talking about, Doug? He said, that medicine's doing its job. It's time for you to stand up and do yours.
Yeah.
And I went home. I quit smoking. I had 3 cigarettes left in my pack.
There you go.
Yeah, I kept those for like a year.
All right. Enough about Chantix and smoking.
Yeah.
Back to the heels.
Yeah, sorry.
As Steve mentioned, they were recommended to Dr. Benjamin Simon, mainly for their mental issues that they were having. He was a Boston psychiatrist, widely respected Boston psychiatrist. He specialized in hypnosis therapy. He was highly regarded for treating World War II veterans that had PTSD. He was known for skepticism as well as professionalism. Also, I think it's important to note that Dr. Simon was not a UFO believer. He approached these cases very clinically. Now, the way the sessions were structured, first of all, the sessions didn't begin until 1964. This happened, was it in September of 61?
Yeah, I think so.
Mid to late 61. These didn't begin till 2.5 years later. He conducted the sessions. I think you mentioned this separately. He didn't have them in the same room. He conducted the hypnosis sessions separately. There was no crosstalk between Betty and Barney. He was trying to treat trauma. He was not trying to uncover aliens. Some important parts or takeaways from Barney's sessions. According to Simon's notes that he and the Hills made public years later, Barney's sessions were basically emotional breakdowns. Barney showed extreme cases of fear. There was panic. He was crying. He described being taken aboard an aircraft or a craft. He remembers being immobilized, a medical team being around him. Doesn't remember the exact details, so was he probed? Can't say for sure. He remembers being immobilized in what he described as a hospital room, as a operating type table. Barney again was originally the skeptic. I think it adds weight to the story. He didn't buy into the alien thing at all to begin with. Betty Sessions, on the other hand, were a little different. Hers weren't very emotional at all. Hers were much more conversational in nature. She describes communications with the beings. She also remembers medical procedures. She again didn't say whether or not she was so. Can't answer your question, Mr. Ed. I think that question came from, but
Yes.
they do both remember medical procedures. This is where the star map that Steve mentioned earlier, that didn't come to Betty until she was under hypnosis. She remembered the map that she was shown and actually drew the map, the star map. We'll talk about that again in a minute. Dr. Simon's interpretation. When the series of hypnosis sessions were complete, he actually wrote an article about the Hills for the journal Psychiatric Opinion. He concluded a few things. Number one, he believed that the Hills had experienced something very traumatic. He still did not buy their alien abduction story, but he thought they were telling the truth. He believed that they had been subjected to something, he just didn't know what. He thought the hypnosis may have blended dreams plus real fear. He did acknowledge the consistency between the two accounts. He did acknowledge the fact that both of them seemed to be genuine and not faking or putting on. He also could not explain the matching details of their accounts.
That's the creepy part to me.
It is. There's a
You
lot
know,
of creepy parts. to it.
Husband and wife, they do chat. They do talk. They
Sure.
talk about things. And most people are pretty deep on that. I lack in that. I'm a very shallow person. I try hard. But
You're not big into pillow talk.
not really. It's just I'm not. And that's a downfall probably.
It is what it is.
It's a guy thing. But it's pretty easy. They're adamant. They didn't talk about this together.
And it's one thing to say that they consistently told the same story. Over the course of these many sessions, he got into such great detail. You would have had to written a semi-autobiography to be able to get all your details lined up.
Right.
There was a lot of details that matched.
Sorry, didn't mean to.
No, you're fine. Post-hypnosis, the Hills went back to their regular lives. They were more than willing to discuss the encounter with friends or family if they brought it up to them. They had the occasional UFO researcher, but the Hills, and I think this is very important. Brett's talked before about the monetary impact. Was there the chance of making money? Because that certainly can influence the way things go. The Hills made no effort to seek publicity, none. It wasn't until October 25th of 1965 when a front page story in the Boston Traveler occurred about the incident. The following day, the United Press International, the UPI, picked up the story, and it was then and only then that the Hills began to earn the publicity that even turned into international attention. In 1966, author John Fuller wrote The Interrupted Journey about the case. In it, he included a copy of Betty's drawing to the aforementioned star map. Again, we talked about under hypnosis. When she was telling about the map, he asked her if she could draw it. She actually drew the map while still under hypnosis. She said that she recalled being shown a 3D star map. And in the map, there were lines that connected the stars, some of which she was told were trade routes. Some of the other lines were trade routes between stars. There was trade routes.
That's very specific. I like those things.
Even on her map, she showed which ones were trade routes and which ones were simply expeditions to other surrounding stars. Her map supposedly showed that.
Those details are so convincing to me.
They are.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I keep interrupting.
To get that a little, no, you're fine. To get that a little more convincing, a few years later, Marjorie Fish, who was a school teacher and amateur astronomer that lived in Ohio, she read The Interrupted Journey, and she decided to see if she could make any sense out of that map. She decided to see if she could decipher the origin of the UFO that the Hills had encountered from their star map. She begins to build 3D string models of nearby star systems. She spends years working on this project based upon the maps that Betty had drawn. She determined that the map was of the double star system Zeta Reticuli, a binary star system that is approximately 39 years away. The Astronomy magazine covered that in their December 1974 issue, in which, for the first time ever, they invited comments and debate about a UFO report.
Wow.
That was when things began to explode. The UFO community had such interest at that point. This map that this woman under hypnosis had drawn, that she supposedly had been shown while she was aboard their starcraft, suddenly turns out to be Zeta Reticuli.
Jerry,
Yes.
you looked into these sessions more than I have. What stands out to you the most?
A few things, and you hit on probably one of the biggest: the consistency over long periods of time between their very detailed stories and between each other.
Yeah.
There was very, very little deviance, almost none between their story. When they were asked to tell the story, and it's one thing to give a brief overview and for a couple of weeks later to be asked the same question and for it to make sense. But when you're talking for hours and hours and hours, and the detail of those events stays the same week after week, month after month, and someone else is telling the same story and their story matches yours. It's the consistency that blows me away. I cannot fathom how two people could have come up with these stories. And keep in mind, they had no idea what questions they were going to be asked, right?
Right.
So that's usually what catches people in lies, right? Is when you ask them something they're not anticipating and they have to come up on the spot with some answer. They had no idea what kind of questions they were going to be asked. So there had to be a ton of questions asked that they weren't prepared for, that they hadn't scripted, if you will, if they were making this up. Yet they were still consistently given the same answers.
Right.
That's hard to explain.
We're going to have a video soon that kind of does that same thing.
There you
go. Sorry.
Absolutely. Again, the UFO community began to explode with interest after it turned out that what she had drawn was Zeta Reticuli. Zeta Reticuli became central to gray alien lore. There's a lot of debate among astronomers, coincidence or meaningful pattern. Regardless of the accuracy, it was culturally huge. Let's talk a bit about the reaction, the public reaction, the media, the government. You mentioned the NICAP. This was a serious civilian UFO research group. They treated the Hills as very credible. They helped bring this case into public awareness. Air Force, Project Blue Book. Hill's report was included in official investigations. Air Force didn't confirm the abduction. They also did not dismiss them as hoaxers. It turned out later, years later, through Freedom of Information Act release, that they believed that the story was extremely interesting and credible. Cultural context. Steve mentioned this happened in 1961 during the Cold War. There was a lot of Cold War area. We're also in the beginning of the space race. I think you also mentioned the Hills were an interracial couple, obviously in the middle of the civil rights movement. Sci-fi at this point was beginning to boom. I think the public was probably primed and ready for a story like this. That certainly helped. Once it became well known, that certainly helped with its publicity. The media reaction was slow at first. Again, that's largely because the Hills were not seeking attention, did absolutely nothing trying to promote that. Later on, it obviously became one of the most famous abduction cases ever. It's still known to be the original, if you will. Other people had claimed abduction. There was no case. This is the first case that ever got national, much less international attention for an abduction case. Let's talk about the skeptics case. Not everyone believes this. Let's talk about some of the reasons that the skeptics have. A lot of the skeptics say it was sleep deprivation. I don't remember the exact times. I'd read it, but I forgot. They had been driving for quite a while, a long time. This is late at night. It was a long drive. The sleep deprivation is sometimes blamed as one of the reasons that could have possibly caused it. Stress. Don't forget they were an interracial couple in the early 60s. I cannot imagine how much stress that would have caused. Steve is shaking his head. I agree. I don't see stress causing
Or sleep
this.
deprivation.
I would agree with it. You probably will not agree with this one either. Neither do I. Another reason that is often used from skeptics is misidentified aircraft. Again, this thing supposedly, when they were initially observing it, moving extremely erratically, not in one direction, it would stop, make sudden, abrupt movements. This is what, 50 years ago, 50, 60 years ago?
It's almost,
Oh, it's older than
almost
me.
like a 10-year period for you.
Exactly. To this day, we don't have anything that begin to make movements anywhere near like that. There certainly was nothing in that day and time that could.
We have a craft now that could potentially do this, but it's loud, it's slow. It's one of those craft that if you saw it, you'd be able to say, hey, that's got people in it. The Osprey can do that. The F-35 can fly in and then hover and drop. But this
it
is
can't be
2026.
what the Osprey or none of those can do is be moving forward at a rapid rate of speed and instantaneously
No.
suddenly switch to reverse and be moving the
No,
opposite
cannot.
direction.
It-
We have
absolutely.
nothing that can come close to that.
Well, I'm just kidding. No, you're right. You're right. We just don't. That we are aware of.
Now, let me find where it was. Oh, yeah. Misidentified aircraft. Some say it could have been a military plane, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm not buying that at all. The biggest reason that the skeptics use that I find somewhat believable is false memory under hypnosis. We do know that hypnosis can create confabulation. Dr. Simon himself warned about this. Again, Dr. Simon, an expert in the field, still said that he did not believe these were lying. He believed that they believed what they described. Hypnosis is subject to leading questions. When someone is under hypnosis, they are proven fact, they are very subject to leading questions. I would counter that by saying Dr. Simon was a well-known professional. Dr. Simon recorded all of these sessions and turned them over once permission was given by the Heels, turned them over for other people to view, and you can still listen to them. If he had been guilty of that, he wouldn't have turned them over.
Right.
He wouldn't have made it public so all of his peers could listen to it and say, hey, why did you ask this question
Why
this
did you
way?
lead them in this direction?
Also, the skeptics aren't saying, well, here's where he led them in a certain direction. No one that I've read, and I searched to see if that existed, I could find no evidence of anyone saying that Dr. Simon did that. Yes, hypnosis does tend to be subject to that. We have no evidence, even though he recorded all of his hypnosis sessions, we have no evidence that he
Kudos
did
to
any of
him
that.
too, man, for doing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It just shows again that he was
A professional.
a professional, that he was why he was considered a reputable psychiatrist. Yeah, so some of these things make sense, but at the same point, there's no evidence of some of these being happened. Now, here's one that I find hard to explain. In his second or third hypnosis session, Barney sketched what he saw the figures looked like. He drew it. What he drew, what he described and drew, is eerily similar to an episode of The Outer Limits called The Bolero Shield that aired 12 days before his hypnosis session.
Oh, no.
12 days before. Now, again, this is something that could be cross-contamination, even if unintentional.
Right.
And here's what I mean by that. There's a lot of people, I digress for a second. There's a lot of people that say, that question about how advanced technology could have been many, many years ago in ancient biblical times. And they talk about why isn't aircraft, things like that mentioned in the Bible. If some people believe in, we've even talked about were alien races coming to the earth to help advance civilization. Some people will say if that was true, why isn't any of that mentioned in the Bible? Here's my question. How do you describe an aircraft when you've never heard of an aircraft? It's thousands of years before the first aircraft. You would explain things in ways that you were capable of understanding.
Right.
It's possible that he was simply using something he had seen on TV to describe something that was basically unexplainable to him.
The when you bring those things up, Jerry, it's very similar to me. Like when people talk about Indian, not Native American, but actual Indian
Right.
culture. What are those things? The Mahadras. I
Okay.
think, and I know I'm butchering that. I apologize, but the giant floating cities that brought their gods,
Right.
and it looks like a big pyramid with flames coming out of it. They're using the languages that they have and the words that they have to describe something that's utterly
Absolutely.
undescribable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think even though that's kind of suspicious, I think there could be a logical explanation. It was his mind trying to make sense of something that he couldn't decipher, he couldn't figure out. The false memory under hypnosis makes a lot more sense to me. Still not buying all of it, maybe part of it. Why the case still matters. The foundational abduction narrative. The heels keep interesting to this day. You often hear typical report of abductions. They're talking about missing time. They're talking about medical exams, or in the case of our listener, probes. Telepathic communication. That's another thing that seems to have become standard. Small gray beings. The vast majority of these abductions involve that. Star maps, not quite as common, still pretty common. You hear that mentioned often. Again, we said early on, these were the OGs. They really were in many ways. Yes.
The Vilamas, Vimanas. That's the word I was looking for. I'm
Gotcha.
sorry. Indian Vimanas. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
People thinking I was crazy when I was trying to say, but I got the right word. We're
There
good.
you go. I think it's important to remember that the Hills weren't looking for fame or money. You can blame them for whatever. You can say they weren't this, they weren't that. Guys, they weren't trying to get rich. They weren't trying to make a quick buck on this. At no point in this does it look like that was their motive. They were respected private people. Their story stems from fear, confusion, and trauma. That was why they sought assistance. That's why they were going to their regular doctor, who became convinced that the majority of the problems were psychological and needed a psychiatrist, and recommended them to Dr. Simon. Some modern day takeaways. Project Blue staff privately considered the Hills credible but mistaken. For those not familiar, Project Blue Book was a United States Air Force program headquartered at one of our favorite spots, the Wright Pat Air Force Base, that investigated over 12,000 reported UFO sightings. They weren't saying this. Here's from a Freedom of Information Act release, we found out that they were considering this very credible, but didn't believe in the final assumption. Kind of like Dr. Simon. They were saying, we believe these people are telling the truth. You mentioned earlier about the pink powder on Betty's dress. For many years, that was considered to be of extraterrestrial origin. With modern day technology, that is no longer considered to be extraterrestrial. The pink discoloration is consistent with fungal bleaching. However, tears and fiber distortion do still remain unexplained. DNA testing was attempted, but was incomplete due to degradation of the gum. Audio engineers to this very day note that Barney's panic under hypnosis remains psychologically, physiologically genuine. His breathing, the voice strain, they believe that there's zero chance that Barney faking any of his panic, his hysteria under hypnosis. He was really traumatized. So, final answer, final summation, to me, it's much less easily dismissed than what the skeptics try to say. It's probably a little less airtight than believers want, but it's still one of the most compelling abduction cases ever. It's still the OG, again, if you will. There's still a ton of unanswered questions. So, that's where I'm at with it.
Let's talk skeptics for just a second. What do you think the most reasonable alternative explanation is that you've seen?
Well, it's what I was talking about earlier. There's problems with being able to recall memory under hypnosis. There's a lot of problems associated with that. Most courts will not allow that as testimony if the memory was only obtained under hypnosis. The reason that there's problems with it, the reason that courts don't usually allow it, is it's proven, like we talked about. Hypnosis itself can create confabulation. We know that hypnosis is very subject to leading questions. There's just problems with memory, false memories that are obtained under hypnosis. So that is my biggest issue with it. Although at the same time, when you look at it in the big picture, why were they going to be hypnotized? They weren't going to be hypnotized to try to prove there was aliens. They were going to be hypnotized to deal with the mental anguish they were going through after the event. It was that traumatic. So it's kind of a dual-edged sword. But that was the false memory under hypnosis, to give you the short answer.
Nice.
What would it be for you?
For me, first of all, full disclosure, it's really hard for me to play skeptic.
You believe it that completely?
Well, if we just take it at bare bones facts, in the 1960s, we did not have craft that we are aware of on a public knowledge level that can do the things that this particular craft done without sound.
According to these two people.
And I have to extrapolate that according to the many people I've talked to and you've talked to over the years at this point who have seen similar things.
This one didn't have the triangular lights.
I know, but behaved, flew, whatever you want to call it, in very similar fashion as some of these others. Even to Dr. David Prater, the Tic Tacs and all the other things. This is pretty impressive. If you only could a helicopter maybe do that? Yes, but a helicopter's loud, like really loud. You don't
very loud.
You don't not know there's a helicopter around. So I just find it very believable. Here's the thing that I think I find the most believable. Most of the time, when people are attempting to fake something like this, there is a personal gain to it.
Yep.
Money, a book deal. How many times have we got into a story and realized that a book deal was the very bare bones minimum of it? That's what they're going for.
What was the one abduction that we did that it turned out they had the login contract and they're almost to the end of it? There was a huge...
The attack, the logging crew attack.
Yes, there was going to be a huge penalty if they didn't meet it, and just got them out of that. Yes, many cases. You're right.
So now, those things are, I'm just saying, those are the fact that these guys didn't do that. They were already, and I'm not saying famous, but they were already very active in their community. They were already very respected in their community. They were already advocates for their community. So it wasn't like they had anything to gain here, only to lose. But what?
Say what?
You were going to say something.
Can you talk for one more minute? I'm trying to find something.
Of course I can. Are you kidding me? I can talk for 20 minutes. I mean, how long have you met me? So on this particular case, I find them very credible. They are already living a hard life. In the 1960s, to be a biracial couple, even though they were living in New Hampshire, like I said, the law didn't even change to make what they were doing nationally legal for 6 more years, which is a dark side in our entire history. Come on, let's be honest. And I just want to take a quick second to welcome our Vietnamese listeners. Thank you for listening from Vietnam.
Slovakia, you've dropped down, way down.
Slovakia,
Now
my
Vietnam.
guys over in Slovakia, you got to come up now. Come on. We have listeners. While you're doing that, I'm going to take a second. I am completely humble because we have listeners in all 50 United States. Makes sense, right?
Sure.
You know, that's cool. We cover some cool topics. Somebody in every state's going to find that. What I find amazing
Absolutely.
is that we have listeners in almost 80 other countries around the world.
Do you have that list pulled up? Could you tell them some of the top 10 countries?
Sure, I can do that.
That blows me away. I mean, it's not Great Britain and Australia and Canada. It's who these other.
Yeah.
We're the United States is number one. Surprised to no one, but it's the other 9 countries,
Right.
or at least most of them.
I'll pull it up here in just a second.
It just astounding.
And you are not unheard. We want you to come to our website, which is
Newsworthy with StephenJerry.com.
send us a message. Tell us where you're from. Tell us a local cryptid that you want us to talk about. Because there's so many cryptids around the world. There's so many things that are around the world.
Or a UFO story famous in your area.
Yeah. Tell us something that's happened directly around you. We want to hear about that. I want to also say, real quick, while we have a second, you were talking about his thoughts about hitting the thing that had released 12 days earlier, the TV show.
Right.
That's okay. The difference is in what he described could be just corrupted memory, as opposed to Chupacabra, where that lady took it and tried to make it real and sell a book.
Yep.
There's a huge difference.
Totally
So
right.
here's just a quick list of the countries, the 10 biggest countries that we have listening to us right now. Just
for the
top
last 30 days.
10. Last 7 days.
Okay. Last
In
7 days.
7 days, this is the list of the 10 countries that have listened to
Right.
Newsworthy. And we want to thank each and every person there.
Absolutely.
Vietnam,
Number 2, right?
number 1 in the last 7 days.
Number 1 above the United States.
Number
Oh, my
1 in
goodness.
the last 7 days. Vietnam, the United States, obviously, thank you. Our heart goes out to you. Come see us at Hocking Hills and at the various festivals. Iraq, Venezuela, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, and India, which is why I had to make sure I got that right.
I'll be darned.
Those are countries around the world listening to old country boys talk. I
Not
love
a
it.
single one of those are English-speaking countries other than the United States. Not a one.
It's impressive.
It
And
is.
I am very humbled, and I thank each and every one of you.
Absolutely. Found
Sorry.
what I was looking for.
Good.
You remember where we were?
Yes.
I'd ask you about what was your what did you believe the best potential skeptics case? And
Yeah.
you were telling me basically the opposite of why you did believe it, why you were so
Right.
much into believing
I'm
it.
in.
They had a neighbor. I'm sorry, a neighbor of where this happened, not to them, not of where they lived. Jim McDonald, a resident of the area in which the Hills claimed to have been abducted, produced a detailed analysis of their journey. He concluded that the episode was provoked by their misperceiving an aircraft with a warning beacon on Cannon Mountain. He notes that from the road the Hills took, the beacon appears and disappears at exactly the same time that the Hills describe the UFOs appearing and disappearing. So, maybe it wasn't an aircraft at all.
Doesn't
Just
explain
saying.
the missing time. Doesn't explain.
It doesn't explain a bunch of things.
A million things.
But it would explain the erratic movement of
No,
what they saw in the sky.
no.
Why?
Airplane can only move a certain way.
This is a stationary beacon. He was saying that if they were it wasn't moving, they were moving.
Boom. Right. He got to be like you, just a poo-poo and everything.
I'm just saying.
All right, Jerry. Newsworthy. Yes or no? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Is this story deserve more or less news coverage?
I meant what I said. It's not as airtight as I'd like for it to be. It's not nearly as the skeptics say. Which basically means what? There's a lot of questions remaining. As long as there's questions remaining, absolutely needs more news coverage.
we have to absolutely agree. Brett is going to agree with us today, even though he's over there polishing some white, some little white dimple balls. I have to. There's too many questions unanswered. For me, the old fallback is these folks weren't in it for the notoriety. They weren't wanting to be popular about it. They weren't wanting money. They didn't get a book. They didn't get a movie deal. That speaks volumes.
Absolutely.
Jerry, tonight's bonus story is all about one of those cryptids we talked about.
Nice. Which one?
Jackalope.
Okay.
A horned rabbit thought by some to have been hunted to absolute extinction. The jackalope lives on in the minds and memories of those fascinated by these creatures. The jackalope has the body of a large rabbit, but with antlers protruding from its head. The jackalope myth came from an American West in the late 1700s, early 1800s. The creature appeared in stories told by trappers, cowboys, and the first Euro-American settlers who came to the region. While there is little hard evidence to support the existence of this most mystical creature, there might be some evidence the jackalope over the decades. There have been reports of large rabbits infested with Shopé papillomatosis virus. Whew, say that 4 times fast.
Mouthful.
A virus that causes growth of hardened tumor-like skin, usually from the skull. Such a virus would create growths that from a distance could easily resemble horns. There are also stories that jackalope is intelligent. The creature likes to sing. According to cowboy folklore, jackalopes have been known to join cowboys at night and sing along with their favorite campfire songs. Is this creature real or just an inside joke for Wyoming residents and a few visitors to the Grand Teton National Park? I'll let you decide. But Wyoming does sell jackalope hunting licenses just in case you're in the woods and might need one.